Welcome to this explainer, where we're going to break down exactly how global commerce is quietly undergoing a massive, rapid transformation. Look, if you follow global supply chains, you already know efficiency is the name of the game. Historically, you won that game by mastering geography, labor arbitrage, route efficiency, the whole shebang. But right now, the entire playing field is literally shifting under our feet. We're moving from a world governed purely by geographic logistics to an era defined by molecular accounting. It's wild. The operational metrics that dictated global success for the past 50 years are being completely rewritten. And honestly, the crazy part is just how few people are actually paying attention to the sheer speed of this shift. We're about to see winners and losers separated entirely by their ability to adapt to a radically new framework. But before we get into the actual mechanics of all this, I want you to ask yourself a really fundamental question about how the world buys and sells goods. Think about it. When a container ship leaves port, or a huge multinational signs a 10-year vendor contract, what really dictates that transaction? For decades, the foundational triad was always the same, right? Fiat currency, exchange rate fluctuations, and razor-thin bottom-line pricing. As long as the math worked out in dollars or euros, the deal got done. But looking at the trade landscape evolving today, what is the new currency of global trade? What's the new invisible metric dictating market access? Well, let's dive into it. The answer is carbon, and it is absolutely rewriting the rules of supply chain survival. We aren't just tracking the financial cost of moving a widget from point A to point B anymore. No, we are now forced to meticulously track the exact environmental weight of that widget. Carbon has literally become a ledger item. Every single ton of emitted CO2 now carries a quantifiable financial liability that sits right there next to operational costs on a balance sheet. It's a tangible currency. It can instantly make or break international deals. If your business, or the businesses you invest in, don't know how to count it, price it, and strategically reduce it, they're simply going to be priced right out of the global market. Section 1. The Global Trade Blind Spot. To understand why this is such a massive shock to the system, we really need to look at what businesses are getting wrong right now. Most leaders are completely blind to this upcoming shift, mainly because they're still operating under the illusion that global trade is only governed by those old, traditional metrics. You've got boardrooms around the world obsessing over familiar things. They're stressing over traditional tariffs, managing bottlenecks in major shipping lanes, and constantly trying to squeeze out labor costs. Imagine a huge multinational spending months negotiating a tiny labor cost reduction in Southeast Asia, totally ignoring the fact that the factory runs on a super polluting, outdated coal grid. That company is driving a car while staring dead into the rearview mirror. They're completely missing this massive regulatory wall being built right in front of them, where the millions they saved on cheap labor are going to be instantly vaporized by environmental compliance fees. Section 2. Decoding carbon borders. Let's get into it. Okay, let's shatter that old illusion entirely and look at the actual mechanism driving this paradigm shift. The absolutely crucial point here is understanding this acronym CBAM. It stands for the Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanism. Now, I know, that sounds incredibly bureaucratic and dry, but it's actually a revolutionary concept. Think of it literally as a financial toll booth set up right at a continent's border. Imagine two identical shipping containers arriving at a major European port. Both contain 10 tons of industrial steel. Under the old rules, they're treated exactly the same based on weight and classification. But now, the border authority looks deeper. Container A's steel was forged using a hydropowered electric arc furnace. Boom, it passes through with minimal friction. Container B's steel, though, forged in a traditional coal-fired blast furnace. Suddenly, an enormous financial toll is dropped right on top of that shipment. They're charging the importer purely based on the dirty energy used to create that product. And this just brilliantly illustrates the new reality we're facing. Under the old trade model, you could offshore your manufacturing to a country with zero environmental regulations, burn super cheap coal to make your product, and win the global market just by competing purely on the lowest price. But under the new trade model, that strategy is dead. You are now competing on price plus your carbon footprint. Think about the business insight here. A procurement manager could spend an entire year fighting tooth and nail for 2% discount on raw materials. But under this new paradigm, all of that hard work is instantly erased by a 15 or 20% carbon toll at the border. The supposedly cheapest manufacturer actually becomes the most expensive option on the market. Wild, right? Moving on to Section 3, the global ripple effect. Now, you might be wondering how one single region's policy impacts the entire globe. Well, notice the breakdown of the initial impact here. Heavy industries are taking the absolute biggest initial hit. We're looking at massive target areas specifically for steel, cement, and fertilizers. Regulators aren't starting with complex electronics or textiles, they're going straight for the heavy hitters. Why? Because these foundational building blocks of the modern world are historically the hardest to decarbonize, but they're also the most centralized and the easiest to track. If you're anywhere in the supply chain for construction, agriculture, or manufacturing infrastructure, the impact of these carbon borders isn't some future possibility. It's an immediate reality crashing down on these specific sectors right now. Let's walk through how this actually builds across the world. Step 1, a major economic region implements a CBAM. Step 2, importers in that region are suddenly slapped with steep carbon fees for bringing in dirty products. And step 3 is where the whole power dynamic shifts. Those importers immediately turn around to their global suppliers on the other side of the planet and say, hey, you need to decarbonize your factory right now, or we literally cannot afford to buy from you anymore. It sparks this ruthless domino effect. Large buyers are suddenly auditing Tier 2 and Tier 3 suppliers in developing nations, fundamentally altering global sourcing strategies. Just like that, a single policy forces a supplier thousands of miles away to instantly clean up their act, invest in green tech, or entirely lose access to their biggest, most lucrative customers. Which brings us to Section 4, a ticking clock for business. This is the most urgent takeaway from our source material today. I really want to stress that this is not some theoretical problem slated for 2050. The phases of this rollout are happening right now. Year 1 kicks off with initial carbon reporting. And look, that sounds easy on paper, but it's an absolute administrative nightmare in practice. Companies are suddenly waking up to massive data silos, totally uncooperative vendors, and a desperate need for specialized carbon accounting software just to calculate the footprint of their deep supply chains. By year 3, we see a gradual financial phase-in. That's where the actual monetary penalties begin to bite. And by year 5, you've got full tax implementation. The shift from mere reporting to severe financial penalties is moving incredibly fast. It's turning an administrative headache into a direct existential threat to the bottom line. Our source material over at GeneCapsule issues a really stark warning on this. They say, CBAM is reshaping global trade faster than most businesses realize. And the emphasis there absolutely has to be on the word faster. The sheer speed of this rollout is catching the vast majority of international supply chains completely off guard. Supply chains are notoriously slow, right? They're heavy ships to turn, finding a new environmentally compliant vendor, auditing their facilities, renegotiating international contracts. That stuff often takes a minimum of 18 to 24 months. By the time that full tax implementation hits, if you haven't already spent years preparing your data and pivoting your sourcing, it's going to be entirely too late to avoid the financial hit. So I'll challenge you with this final, provocative thought to consider for your own business or the industries you track. Can your supply chain actually survive in a carbon-taxed world? Do your current long-term vendor contracts have carbon-sharing liability clauses built right in? Because the era of free pollution in global commerce is completely over. No more free rides, the toll booths are fully operational, the ledgers are being updated molecularly, and the rules of global trade have officially changed for good. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and I highly encourage you to go ask these hard questions of your procurement teams before that ticking clock runs out.